Okay, my outstanding friends, it just never ends. It just never ends. Another shocker du jour from the home of the shocker du jour, Mudfossil University. Roger, your host. What are we talking about today? Our atmosphere transforms dust. It transforms the dust from the Sahara into minerals that fuel life. Well, see where all that dust is coming from and moving over? They say it goes all the way over to the Amazon. Well, let's look into this, because I have a particular interest in that source of dust. And I think I can account for why it has so much biomineralization. That means it's biological in nature. It's not just dust and sand. All right, let's check it out. Okay, watch this carefully. They're having these dust plumes coming off of here, out of this particular area right here primarily. Now let's watch it in only 15 seconds, 20 seconds. Here goes. You see what's happening? Now this whole area, I just stopped it. This whole area here is creating this plume of dust, which is extremely bioreactive, and it's blowing right off of this area. Now, I'm just going to stop it there. We don't have to go any further. Although, well, I'll go a little further. Hold on. All right, so it goes way all over the ocean. Look how much is coming off of it, right from that very spot. Why there? All right, it ends up going all over here. They're going to show something about a rocket ship taking off in a second. But all of that stuff, all right, so that's what it is. It's blowing all that dust from where it was, which is here, all the way across the ocean. And they say it's extremely biological, and it's easy for organisms to use because it's so biological already, and they can't account for that. So what they say is, when this dust, which is not biological, and I disagree, I say it starts biological, it ends biological. They say it gets up in the atmosphere, it gets hit by radiation, and it changes it into biology. No, I don't agree with that at all. You take some sand that has no biological component to it, it's basically silicates, and irradiate it, you're not going to turn it into biology. This is iron. This is iron. Iron didn't just happen in the atmosphere. Okay, my friends, this is going to be about the dragon, the fish, all of this runoff, all of this dust that's blowing across. This is biology, and it turns into dusty biology. Stay tuned. Okay, my friends, I am just going to show this quickly because they may not allow this, but this is a decaying corpse, and that is effluent running off. So the body has to be twisted like this. And now, whether they'll let me show that or not, I don't know. But it has the same effluent as a decaying dragon would have in the desert. The same effluent is coming off of this creature's body. Now, will it allow that? I don't know. Okay, my friends, just hold on tight. This is our atmosphere transforms dust from the Sahara into minerals that fuel life. Well, dust is just, it doesn't really grow anything, they don't think. But they say it gets transformed into minerals that fuel life. Well, where are those minerals coming from? Right from here. Right from there. That's where the source comes from. Well, what is this here? What's going on with that? Why would it come from here? Why doesn't it come from here? Why doesn't it come from over here? Well, let's see what that is on Google Earth. And we'll see why that dust blows off over there and why it is so biologically active. All right, they think it gets transformed up in the atmosphere and it breaks it all down and turns it into food. Well, I disagree with that conclusion. All right, so here's the story. They realized that this is extremely biologically active. It's like almost like putting fertilizer down. And why would it be fertilizer? It's coming out of a sandy desert. It's just literally putting fertilizer into the ocean. It's exactly what it says. It says dust swept from the Sahara desert, provides life at the bottom of the marine food chain with a critical nutrient. Well, what is that critical nutrient? It says without the iron's the critical nutrients, is carried far and wide in this mineral cloud. Ocean phytoplankton would struggle to bloom. Without this, the oceans are not going to be fertile. Well, why is this so fertile? Why is this like, literally, it's basically fertilizer. Let's see if we can figure it out. All right, take heed. Listen to this carefully. It says previous studies have suggested the patterns of these bioactive irons, where all these bioactive irons are, they match with areas of increased biological activity. This includes more microbe activity on the surface to the Caribbean coral reefs and the fertilization of the Amazon region. They say these clouds of bioactive, biologically fertilizer land over there and make everything grow. Well, let's look into that. Okay, my friends, this is very important to understand. They're saying that all this dust ends up filtering down and landing in the Amazon. In Amazon, coming from, well, here it says, a 7-year study found an average of 28 million metric tons of North African dust provides the Amazon River Basin with about 22,000 tons of fertilizing phosphorus as well. All right, and the other thing they found out that from Asia has fertilized Hawaii's rainforest. Well, let's look into these statements. But remember phosphorus. Phosphorus is the key to life. That's what the effluent of bodies decomposing have, just a ton of phosphorus. And then they have all the metals that are involved in the body fluids, which is blood and so forth, and it's called effluent. All right, does body fluid effluent have lots of phosphorus? Yes. Body fluid effluent contains phosphorus primarily due to the breakdown of biological materials during decomposition. That's the membranes, and you have membranes everywhere in your body. Even your skin is a membrane. Every organ has membranes, every muscle, every tendon, every organ, everything. And it breaks down and it turns into high concentrations of phosphorus in the body fluids that leak out of the body after they die. All right, you see this? Phospholipid bilayer. That's phosphorus primarily. And in between, there's some gooey stuff that separates them and only allows things in through the membrane into the cells and so forth that are okay to come through. There's what they call ion channels, protein channels, all kinds of little squiggly things in here to say you can come in or you have to stay out. Every single cell in your body, even red blood cells, have one of these around them, which have the phospholipids. That's why extremely high concentrations of phosphorus, and that's what makes things grow. That's what's in blood. Plus, there is a plethora of metals, which metals are one of the most important things to make things grow, especially, in red blood. The metals are the primary mover of all the things that happen in your body. They are the metals and a central core, and then they are coated with a whole batch of what they call ligands, which are the particles that make your body live. And they drag them through your body, and they drop some here, drop some there, drop some here, drop some there, and they come back and get more. Transition metals have charges on them. That's how they work. But this is why there's so much phosphorus in this dust that's coming around, 22,000 tons or whatever it was. They sell blood meal, and blood has nothing basically but iron metals, all kinds of different metals, and that's about it. The water, once it dries out, you're left with what made the blood. And what makes blood? Well, here it is right here. Boom. This is what is in blood. This is 106 volunteers. And this, whoops. You do not currently have access to this article. I'm blocked again. Oh well. Okay, this is what they're trying to account for, this heavy mass of bioactive iron. Bioactive means it's basically blood. Because iron is basically blood. And they're saying this is in quotes, the relationship suggests that chemical processes up in the atmosphere convert less bioreactive iron to more accessible forms, which the plants and the animals can absorb very easily. It says, with its heavy mass of bioactive iron, the dust fuels a vast food chain, thousands of miles from where it was originated in the Sahara Desert. Okay, I am back again, torn away for a moment, but back to these bioreactive iron dust particles. Well, why are they coming from there? Let's look at what this looks like on Google Earth. Now, you know about typhon and the fish, I hope. If you've been here, you certainly do know about it. So let's see what typhon and the fish have to do with this iron. Now, don't forget all that stuff, heavy mass of bioactive iron. Why would it be bioactive if it's just sand in the desert? Now, don't forget, they're talking about iron. Well, it also creates a lot of fertilizing phosphorus. It says, I think I read this to you before, but 7-year study found an average of 28 million metric tons of dust from North Africa provides the Amazon River basin with about 22,000 tons of fertilizing phosphorus. Phosphorus makes things grow very well. You see this right here? I put in this body fluid effluent, decaying bodies have lots of phosphorus. It says yes. Body fluid effluent contains phosphorus primarily due to the breakdown of biological materials during decomposition. Phosphorus is an essential element in living organisms. As I think I showed you, like I said, I got called away, but the membranes, as a matter of fact, well, I'll just make sure that I don't miss anything. There's all that effluent in the form of dust. And here's what the bilipid phosphorus membrane is, and there's going to be phosphorus everywhere. At 22,000 tons of phosphorus coming across with the iron, and the iron is the blood. You got so much iron in you, it's just unbelievable. So where did it come from? It came from here. Well, what is there? What is there? As I said, typhon in the fish. All right, don't forget, this is what happens when a corpse decays undetected. All the fluids blow out and come down and drain off of the body. That's called effluent. And that has all of that iron, the reactive iron. It has all the phosphorus from the exploding membranes, and it just runs out as a fluid. And it's sort of, a creamy looking color. It's not the same as blood. Blood is black and red. When you have a wound that exudes red blood and vein blood, they'll be red and black. This is just the fluids that fester in the body and run out, the effluent. Okay, I always go back to the earliest texts. The earliest texts should be taken into account. This is what Herodotus wrote, and he was very, very skilled scholar. Now, this goes way back to 450 BC. Now, Plato was 50 years later or so. So Plato took some of Herodotus' stuff, but he changed it. Because what happened here? This is the Pillars of Hercules, which are the Straits of Magellan, the Pillars of Hercules. It comes in, and there's Italy and so forth. What's this right here? Atlantis. Atlantis. And then this is Atlantis, which, whatever that is, I don't know. But these appear to be like little city-states. Now, I have other maps from much later, but this one here shows, at this time, it was a desert. There is no ocean in here that I can see. So it had already drained by the time that Herodotus was around 450 BC, because he went to all these different places and studied. He says, this here's Nikos started a canal to the Red Sea, which was finished by Darius, 4 days' journey long. The water is derived from the Nile, and that's from Herodotus 2:158. Now here's Herodotus 2:11. The two gulfs, right here, ran into the land so as almost to meet each other, and I know why, and left between them only a very narrow tract of country. All right, I understand this structure right here, and I'm going to tell you right now, this right here is also on another map from 1375. Let me show you this. This goes way back. This is 450 BC. So let's see what they did later when they really mapped this stuff out. Don't forget, Atlantis is right there. Now, let's go and find the other map, which is right here. All right, let's take a quick look at this. Okay, this is the map of the world as they knew it at this time, and this is from 1375. It's called the Atlas Catalan Abraham Crusk. All right, now, very ornate map, very nicely done, as you can see. And it calls out every king or whatever, a ruler of certain areas, and the areas that they controlled and who they were, and he puts little crowns on their head. Obviously they're somebody of importance, and I can't read this stuff, so I don't really know what it means. But there's the Red Sea, and what is this here? First of all, this is the area that all that dust is coming from, right in this area here, and blowing across the ocean. This, I think it could be Typhon. There's his tail, and here's his whole body, runs up all the way to where his throat was cut, right there. And this would be where his head was. And this looks like it could have been where Atlantis was at one time. I mean, it's kind of festive looking. And it looks like at one time the ships were coming into here. I don't know what, like I say, I don't understand what this says. But it's pretty ornate, and I believe that is Typhon. Again, I don't know what this says. I don't know what it says. Or if it says anything about it. But boy, I'll tell you, it is detailed. And I can't see any reason why they would put that there. Just put something like that there. It makes no sense. It is what it is, and it's Typhon. All right, so let's go back to Plato versus Herodotus. Herodotus was before Plato, and he puts Atlantis here in the Sahara Desert. Plato says it was outside the Pillars of Hercules, which is out here, Straits of Gibraltar, Pillars of Hercules. No, there is, what Herodotus said was Atlantis was outside the straits. That's what I believe his claim was. Not the Straits of Hercules, or Pillars of Hercules, whatever you want to call it. There's another straits right here. And I've shown that a bazillion times too, and, which I'll show you again right now. And so Atlantis was here, and it is there. That is just almost undoubtable. Okay, ChatGPT is totally wrong on this. Herodotus did not specifically mention Atlantis in his works. No. Plato took over Herodotus' works and claimed it as his own. Plato suggests Atlantis was a powerful civilization, ultimately sank in the ocean due to catastrophic events. Herodotus, known as the father of history, wrote about various historical events and cultures, but he did not reference Atlantis. No, I'm sorry, incorrect. Okay, here's what Google AI has to say, which I agree with. Herodotus mentions Atlantis once in his writings, but does not attribute any special qualities to the people of Atlantis or provide any information about a legendary civilization. He just said, here's what it is. Instead, Herodotus used the term Atlantis to refer to the Atlantic Ocean. All right, to the Atlantic Ocean. Herodotus' comment on Atlantis is this. He says, the Caspian Sea is apart by itself, not having connections with the other sea. For all that sea which the Hellenes navigate, which is the Greeks, and a sea beyond the pillars, which is called Atlantis. Now, beyond the pillars, which is called Atlantis. It's really, I think it's beyond the straits, I believe. But it says it's called Atlantis, and the Erythraean Sea are in fact all one, but the Caspian is separated and lies apart by itself. There was an ocean that drained right across the eye of the Sahara, which was Atlantis. Now, Herodotus also mentions the Pillars of Hercules. That could be yes or could be no. He talked about a straits. Now, he believed were located at the Straits of Gibraltar. Well, I don't think he said anything about the Pillars of Hercules. He said that Atlantis was outside the Straits. That's what I had read somewhere. And everybody's confused it with the Pillars of Hercules, the Straits of Gibraltar. I believe he just said it was outside the Straits, and it is. I'll show you that. And he mentions an Atlantean Sea, which would be the sea that was inside, and a muddy seas in front of the Straits of Gibraltar. No, not the Straits of Gibraltar, the other straits. And also these muddy seas and the Red Sea. He mentioned all of that stuff. And then Plato first mentioned the legendary island of Atlantis in his Timaeus de Melar in 360. That's when Plato took over and he did some good work, I guess, and Plato described Atlantis as a utopian civilization created by half-god, half-human founders. I don't have any dispute with that. But outside the Straits of Hercules, no. There's the Straits, and I'll show it to you right now. Okay, so if all of this bloody stuff is coming out of here, it's not just sand, why is it all bloody? Well, what if that dragon was just, as it's shown on that map from 1375, a decaying dragon, and this is all the effluent, which I'll show you in a minute, and a decaying gigantic fish, which the dragon was attacking, and it is also running off all this effluent into just red runoff of bloody effluent. Just like I showed on that decaying body, it just runs off if it bloats and runs off. Now, can we see the actual creature here? Absolutely. Can we see this one? Absolutely. Let's just look at one outlined and then we'll take a closer look. All right, the one thing I don't want you to forget is that Atlantis is here. It's not outside the Pillars of Hercules. It's outside the pillars of the Atlantean Ocean at one time. And of course it drained out over that, and I'll show you that. Now, here's what I want you to see. This is the dragon. You see all that little flashy stuff going down his throat? Here's his throat right here. And his body stops right here. All of that is the effluent. That's the stuff, the dust that's blowing off, because it's already body fluids. You don't have to break that down and turn it into something bioreactive. It's already bioreactive. And this is his head, and he's exactly portrayed this way in Apollodorus 1.6.3. You see that? Some people have a hard time seeing what they're seeing, but this is his throat. Runs all the way down like this. All the way down into it, and his body is way over here. This thing is absolutely, and it does exactly what it shows in the that map. It goes all the way across North Africa, and the tail flares out at the end right here. You see it? That's still his tail. And those are flared little flutes at the end of his tail. All right, that's not just hills and valleys. All right, that's part of his tail. Now, if you could just come back here a little ways further, you'll see there's all the dragon scales, and they come down to a point where they're no longer scales. They flare out to that tip, which is out here, which is like feathery. You see it? The whole thing feathers out. Exactly identical to what it shows in the ancient map. Identical. No different whatsoever. Now, he's spitting something down at this fish, and that is a fish. Now, I came to a conclusion. Well, I didn't come to a conclusion, but I think maybe this is a flatfish. You see how much fin it has around here and how much fin it has at the bottom and that tail at the end? And then it has two eyes that are flat, I think. I always try to figure out what that is, but I think that might be an eyeball. And here's the other eyeball. They have two eyes on them, a flatfish. Could that be a flatfish? I don't know. But they have very, very similar look to them as far as the fins go. And at the end, they have a little flap just like that. But they have a lot of fin, and they lay flat on the ocean floor. And they have two eyes. One of them sometimes bulbous looking, and one of them is sort of sunk. And that's what I'm seeing. And don't forget, that's Atlantis right there. And this is the Straits. Remember, I keep talking about the Straits, and so did Plato. Well, Plato didn't realize there was a Straits right here. And this is the Straits that Herodotus knew about. All right, he put Atlantis right over here, exactly where it was, outside the Straits, which is right here. And also, Herodotus and then Plato repeated, said that they will never speak about mud again. So much mud ran out across this area when it collapsed. And he said that they mined everything they could from underneath, and then the whole island collapsed. They were digging out ore and minerals, and it's an eyeball. It's literally an eyeball. And if you don't think that's an eyeball, get an optometrist to take a look at that closely. And if they don't understand what they're seeing, I wouldn't go to them. I've seen everything here. All of this stuff is the functionality of an eye, and it even has the optic nerve. You want to see an optic nerve? It comes right up here, right there. That's the optic nerve. You see that? Abrupt transition. Optic nerve is this right here. You see that? That's what an optic nerve looks like. All right, that runs to your brain, whosever brain it was. It runs up this way to wherever the brain was. That's not just hills and valleys. You see that? That's an optic nerve taking over the nerve impulses that are coming from the eyeball. And see these little webbing? I'm not sure what that does, but I can tell you right now, this is all nerve signals, and then they transfer through the optic nerve to wherever that's going. We live literally on some kind of giant creature or creatures, absolutely no question. And all of this stuff ran out during this collapse, right around the edge of the Straits. Right, here's the Straits. This is where the collapse happened. It ran out here. And Herodotus talks about the same thing. There's all kinds of mud in here. There was a backflow after it ran out, it came back, and there's a pile of mud in here. And he talked about that. He talked about this. He talked about all of the stuff, and it actually, I believe, created the Cape Verde Islands. You see this? It comes out like this and it finally flared over, piled up and then flared around. I say that's how the Cape Verde Islands came to be. And again, Plato said they will never speak of mud again. And that is a fish, and that is a dragon. And if you want to see effluent, there it is right there. And this is his throat. And there's his red flared eye. Look up Apollodorus 1.6.3. It lays them out exactly. These are the scales of his throat. Down here is the effluent. That's the stuff that swirls and blows all the bloody. This is nothing more than blood. You know, bloody mix of what's in your body and your fluids of your body. And see, it runs all down here. That's just nothing more than fluids running down. That's all that is. And here's his actual throat. Here's his head. Here's his actual throat. And this is what the extent of his throat is to where the scales are. He's got a little bit of a jowl here. And then coming down this way are all dragon scales. Come up and take your time and take a look. This is collapsed inside. And that's the inside of his dragon-scaled throat. If you think that just is hills and valleys, I can't imagine how your mind is constructed. And again, this was all written about. I might as well show you. I'll show you in a minute. And he was spitting out this noxious stuff, which is part of the stuff that's blowing around and coming around, which is, I don't know if this is good or bad, but I don't think I'd want to be, you know, it's kind of nasty. Let me put it this way. This stuff is nasty. Because he's spitting it down to kill the fish. See that stuff? It doesn't get much worse than this. That's spitting right out of his mouth down against the fish's back on the fin. And it hits the fin here, it just tears it to shreds. And then it hit the fish's back, and it ate right into where you can actually see the blood vessels. You see that? These are arteries. Arteries go off into the little blood vessels. The blood vessels go into the capillaries. The capillaries go into the veins. The artery comes down, the blood vessels run off to feed whatever's out there, and then at the very end they pinch off and they dump into the veins. Not only that, wait till you see this. We can actually see the lymph ducts, which are the tiniest fibers, and they are what's now called the interstitium. Here they are right there. You see that? This is a vein. Everybody thinks a vein is like just a tube with blood that's already used up. No, it's not. This is where it's absorbing all these extra fluids right at the very end of where your capillaries pinch off. They pinch off here, and all the red blood is now been used up. And now they're going to squirt their fluids into the vein. So the vein is porous everywhere, basically, as far as I can see. And that's a pore spot, porous. Wherever you see, it's all foggy looking. Now, what happens here? These are the lymph ducts. And you see how tiny they are? They're tinier than these, which are the capillaries. They suck up just the lymph fluid. All the big stuff stays out. It's so small they can only take the littlest stuff. And there's 4 times as much fluid running in this as there is blood running in you. This is where all the fluids in your body go. And they are the things that fight invasion, and they did. These tried to stop this fish from being killed. But isn't that cool? That's a vein. Look at that. And this is where it's absorbing the stuff that's being squirted out from the capillaries. So veins are not just a solid tube. I always thought they were. But they are not. And all the veins are coming. This is the vascular network just below the skin and the scales. You see, it's all eaten into. Right down to here by this toxic whatever it is. And you can see on the edges over here some really interesting stuff. You see all that green stuff coming down? That's that toxin. You see that? That's the toxin coming down against this fish to kill it. Now, is there any, so now, this, like I say, this could be a flatfish. It had 2 eyes, something like that. Because again, don't forget all the fins and this spot right here on the end. All right, let's go see if we can find something like that. All right, see this? It is two eyeballs. One of them is kind of nasty looking, and the other one is more subdued. It appears to me, I could be wrong. But you remember it had a whole batch of, fin around here, and that little jobber at the end. They all seem to be similar to that. But different structures and different sizes, different lengths and so forth. But the big globby looking eyeball, I think could be the thing that I had been missing all that time. Because boy, that's really confused me, this one. Is that what it is? I don't know. Is this a flatfish? I don't know. Is that the tail? I would say so. And there's all this sort of fin stuff? I would say so. Is that one of the sizes and structure looking? I would say so. But it is a fish. Of that, there is no question. I mean, you can. I showed you the body and everything. Now, the fins, the scales are going in that direction. That means the fish has to be going this way. If the scales are this way, and the fish try to swim this way, the scales would open up. That's why scales lay back against themselves according to the way the fish is moving. All right, so I don't know, but it's a fish. And even in the ancient texts, it talks about Typhon and the gods turning themselves into animals to try to hide from him. And obviously, an Ares turned himself into, or herself into, a fish. And apparently that's Ares. And then Pan, who was a Titan, tempted Typhon to come out, and she said, for a banquet of fish. In other words, you can come out and kill one of the gods. And this is when Typhon was killed by Zeus with his great and mighty sword. And there it is right there. He cut his throat. Now, we've been talking about effluence, all right? This is not effluent. This is blood. That's red blood growing very green plants, because red blood makes things grow very green. And the black blood is the vein blood, and it grows nothing. You see that? It has no nutrients left in it. Basically, that's the way I see it. But that's the separation from the red to the black. One's a vein, one's an artery. Simple as that. And his throat was cut. Can you imagine what cut that throat? But this is effluent. All right, so pay close attention. I don't want to confuse you. All right, stay with me on this. He died after he got cut. When he got cut, the first thing that happened was the blood ran out. This was nothing here yet. He's dead, laying there, just all that. So there's nothing here. It's just whatever it is. It's probably mud at this point. And he's laying there. And the fish, of course, is down here. Now, he starts to decay and decompose. What happens? Effluent starts to run out all over the place. Not the blood. The blood's already drained out. And it's piled up in piles. You see it? They're not just like a film. These are piles of blood. All right, and that's the other. And the red is very fluid. The black turns hard and it turns into mounds. You see that? That's magnetite. This is hematite, and it runs off it's very much fluidy. Way more fluid. See, this is all red blood too, and it's all run off way down to there. Red blood it just drips and runs. Now, again, up here, this is not blood. This is blood, the red and the black. This is the effluent. This is creating the dust, which is growing all the plants and things, and the photoplankton or whatever they call it out in the ocean. All out here. All right, and again, you saw Atlantis. And it fits exactly with Herodotus. Plato changed things. Herodotus, I believe, said it was 900 years prior to him. Plato has changed it to 9,000 years. It was only 900 years prior, which would have put it about 1300 BC, 1400 BC, which is when all of this disaster happened and the earth was flooded. The whole earth was flooded. Now, did it happen then? I don't know. It might have been earlier. I don't know. But I know the Triassic era, which is the red beds worldwide. Everywhere in the whole world, it's got a red bed and then a gray clay cover over that and then a black cap over the top. And the only way that happens is because there was a global flood, it was a worldwide disaster, and the red is the boiled off flesh and blood, which has a lot of metals in it. It's heavy and it's dense, and it would create that clay layer, which is the red bed. Then the gray clay is the marl, they call it, is the parts of the body that they're not flesh. The flesh boiled right off fast, the first stuff, and settled. The gray clay settled on top, which is, probably plants and cellulose, because all that stuff dissolved. Bones and all that stuff. On top of that, and organs and all that business. And then the black cap was the fallout. And all that happened because of an almost impact of Venus into our atmosphere. Well, it impacted our atmosphere. And it combusted the skies. Burnt literally all the oxygen out of the skies. They couldn't even start fires after that event. The survivors, they came out of their caves or wherever they were hiding up the tops of the mountains, and they couldn't start fires. There was no oxygen left. It took years for it to come back. And at that time, this 3-layer Triassic layer, and I have the Triassic rock right here, and I have a human footprint in it, and I also have new species, which is this one here is a no-toe. We've got all kinds of things. And giants, huge, huge, huge giants. This is a hair follicle from some kind of a giant creature. That's a muscle. That's the sebaceous gland. That's the hair shaft. There's the root ball. And there's the 2 blood supplies, the vein and artery. 2 inches wide. And you go look it up. That's where the muscle attaches. It's called an erector pili muscle. So you can go up on end. And that's the sebaceous gland. It oils up the shaft. Now, I have other ones that are DNA tested, and it would be equivalent to a size of about 180-foot tall person. We don't have any clue about our history because it's been suppressed, and it's still being suppressed. I've been talking about this for 10 years. 10 years. Look in Morocco. And what did I find? A dragon attacking a fish. What do you see? And we know it's all bioactive materials, just all eroding out of here and effluent. That's why there's nothing happened up in the upper atmosphere turning it into biology. This is the kind of stuff they study and spend millions of dollars on doing these studies when they just open their eyes and it's all over. That's the problem. Their solutions you don't get funding. Once you have a solution to something, the funding dries up. So anyway, we got to change what we're looking at here. And again, I showed you all this stuff. I'm not hiding anything. There's Typhon, his red flared eye, his throat, his dragon scaled throat, all that furry, fluffy looking stuff coming off him, and exactly what Apollodorus says. And that's the effluent running down. He is on the maps, all the phosphorus, all over the place. Here's what they're showing. This is where all this heavy minerals are. These are all the, and like Australia, I always said Australia is like a scab. I understand what this is too. That's another. They're all of this stuff is where there was giant biology, and that giant biology is now turned into bioreactive minerals. All right, you see, here's another one, right there. First comprehensive maps of the world's mineral dust source regions. Again, like I said, Australia is a scab. There's so much blood in Australia. It's just unbelievable. That's why they have the opals. Transition metals create the opals. And out here, well, you just saw what I showed you there. And this is what how they reflect from the light, because you can tell what kind of material is there by how it bounces back. All right, this is just stunning to read, but I'm going to go right to the heart of the thing. There was the giants against the gods. The gods was Zeus and his crew, and he also had Hercules working with him. Now, they killed all the giants, but the giants were the children of Earth. They were Gaia's children, and she went insane. Here's what happened. They were fighting. This guy slew this other, and he slew Great in the face, fighting with brazier clubs, killed Argus and Thoas. The other giants, Zeus, who was the god in charge, smote and destroyed with thunderbolts. All right, and all of them Hercules shot with arrows as they were dying. All right, he had to have the help of Hercules. There was something to do with having a god could not kill another god unless he had the help of a half human or something. I don't know, something like that. Anyway, now listen to this. When the gods had overcome the giants, they killed all the giants, and the gods were Zeus and his crew. Earth was more enraged and had intercourse with Tartarus and brought forth Typhon, who was that monster, a hybrid between man and beast. In size and strength, he surpassed all the offspring of Earth as far as the thighs go. And that's the only thing they talk about being human is the thighs. He was of human shape and of prodigious bulk. He outtopped all the mountains. His head often brushed the stars. One of his hands reached out to the west, the other to the east, and from them projected 100 dragons' heads. I have not been able to find those, but it did say in other texts that Zeus cut those off first. Anyway, from the thighs downward, he had huge coils of vipers. Now, don't forget, it's just his thighs. They depict him as having a human body. He didn't have a human body, as I showed you. Now, it says, from the thighs downward, he had huge coils of vipers. When drawn out, reached to his very head, emitted a loud hissing. His body was all winged, unkempt hair streamed on the wind from his head and cheeks. Fire flashed from his eyes. I'll show you the red fire. I'll show you again. Such and so great was Typhon, when hurling kindled rocks, he made for the very heaven with hissing and shouts. I'm going to kill you all. Spouting a great jet of fire from his mouth. Yup. When the gods saw him rushing at heavens, they made for Egypt in flight, and being pursued, they changed their forms into those of animals. It said Ares turns into a fish. But Zeus pelted Typhon at a distance with thunderbolts, and at close quarters struck him down with an adamantine sickle. And then it goes on for a whole bunch of other stuff, how there was still more to this whole story. But as far as I'm concerned, he's in the desert there. I can see him. There is no question about that. Zero question about that. And his throat is cut. Zero question about that. All right, this is written, zero question about that. There's his red flared eye. Zero question about that. All right, there's his unkempt, fluffy whatever. No question about that. There's his dragon-scaled throat. No question about that. All that has nothing to do with his body. This is the effluent we talked about in great detail. going all across the ocean. Already, it's biology. It's just like throwing blood in the ocean. Literally, it's the same thing. It's literally the same thing as throwing blood in the ocean. No difference. All right, I read you the part about Zeus cutting him down with his adamantine sickle or whatever. He cut his throat. But they show him as a human with wings, and then they show his coils and so forth. And this was an ancient pot. I don't know when it was, but that's how they had him depicted, as half human and half serpent. But it's not that way. Only his thighs were human in form, and is exactly what Apollodorus said. So somebody changed the look of him to be human. But in Apollodorus, it says that only his thighs. All right, where is this? He was a hybrid between man and beast. In his strength, he surpassed all the offspring of earth. As far as the thighs, why would they point that out? As far as the thighs, he was of human shape and such prodigious bulk. That's all. That's all. They don't say anything else. Everything else they say you can see as a dragon. It's not a body like that. He's a dragon. So I think I made my case, and here's some ancient Chinese map. They show an ocean inside of Africa, and it looks like you may have a little entrance there. I don't know. A lot of this is guesswork, but this is not a guesswork. This stuff here is just factual. You can't deny this. And for showing this for 10 years and trying to engage with people from every side of the equation. Right now, I'm hated by the academics because this proves at least the myth stories have some merit, which changes literally everything they've told you. I mean 100%. And so they hate me. And the religious people hate me because of the same thing. This just shows that the myths were at least something that should be looked at. But if you look at the Bible and you look at the Quran and you look at all the ancient texts, they all have similar stories about dragons and gods and the great flood and giants and good and evil and heaven and hell. Not one single culture, zero, has no stories like that. Zero. And some of them the stories are just staggering. But if you can't see what I'm showing you and you're not staggered by that, well, then you go on about your little way. That's all I can say. But I think I've made my case in extreme detail. And of course, we all know about all the other ones, Scorbzilla and who's this guy over here? You know who he is? Quetzalcoatl. Here's his headdress. Here's his head. Here's his beards. There's his throat. And there is the dead zone, where he runs off out to here, and whatever he had some kind of juice in him too. We need to reevaluate everything that we have heard. Now the other thing is, this is where another big flash of bio stuff is coming out. Have you ever looked at Vermilion Cliffs? Have you ever looked at this stuff? Which I have. I've looked at it in extreme detail. This is all biology. This is not just hills and valleys. Nobody knows how to look at things with a critical eye. Oh, that just accidentally happened. No, it didn't. I have found so much biology in there, it'd take me months to go over it. Whenever you find abrupt transitions, something is going on. Whenever you see things like this, you got to pay attention to the details. A geologist, oh yeah, it just happens. That's no big deal. That's just the way things are. And they show dragon scales, and they call them flat irons. I'm not kidding you. This is a guy, Meyer, and he's just unbelievable. But see, this is an abrupt transition. It's transitioning from this into whatever this is. I'm not sure what it is. But that's an abrupt transition. That just didn't happen by accident. This is all biology, my friends. All biology. It is what it is. By the way, this is the source of volcanoes. Is poop that's covered up and compressed, and it does this under the ground, and all of a sudden, pow, it pops out. And I know from a fact, I can show you these extreme detail. I mean, so much detail. There's no denying it whatsoever. But this is what happens under the ground. They died with things in their digestive system. A lot of them are blown out now in their caves, and they're no longer reactive. But a lot of them are still capped off, and those are the ones that are exploding. And they have like the one in, I think it's Iceland, or I think Iceland, that big long one. I believe it's like a big long intestine or something. And they bubble up on the surface. They don't explode. If you have the entire creature is really heavily encapsulated, and then there's just a spot where it can pop, like an anus, that's where it blows out. And there are volcanoes, and I know of for a fact, there are rectums, and they do explode violently. And they do over and over. It's not just once and it stops. They have it again, and then again, and again. Because they're purging their digestive system. I'm not kidding you. I don't think they're still alive. I don't know. I have no idea. You know, all I know is, think about this. Think about this critically now. We're looking right here at two creatures that were supposedly immortal gods. That's the way I take it. This was supposedly the turn of the fish, Ares, who was a god. There's a body there. Where's Ares? Can they just leave a body laying around and go somewhere else? Typhon's here. Is he gone? Is he now dead and he's no more on the page? I don't know. Can they just leave a body laying around and take their soul, go somewhere else and make another body? Well, I don't know. If they're immortal, and they had the ability to change into anything they wanted. If you read Ovid, here's the key. Nobody reads any of these things because we were told they were just ridiculous. Listen to this. All right, this is Ovid. Okay, we're talking about Metamorphosis, which was an epic work done by Ovid, O-V-I-D. Now, the poem, they call it these poems, but it's just a work. The work chronicles the history of the world from its creation to the deification of Julius Caesar. There's 250 myths, they say. No, these were stories. He compiled them all into 15 books, 12,000 lines. This was as well read as the Bible at this point. It was an epic, epic work. And he had 15 books. Now listen to this. These are all the books. And he starts out with the creation, ages of mankind, the flood, Deucalion, who was Noah, Apollo, Daphne, Phaeton, Callisto, all these Jupiter, Europa, all of these Cadmus, all of the ones that you hear about, all the way down. These are stories. These weren't just myths. These were stories that were written in the ancient text. Now, here's the key. This name of the book is Metamorphosis, or the work. Metamorphosis, or transformation, is a unifying theme amongst the episodes of the Metamorphosis. All of his stuff. Ovid raises its significance explicitly in the opening lines of his poem. He says in Greek, I intend to speak of forms changed into new entities, or I guess that's Latin. I intend to speak of forms changed into new entities. They changed, they metamorphosed. Accompanying this theme is often violence inflicted upon a victim whose transformation becomes part of the natural landscape. I'm showing you the whole world is nothing but biology. Somehow they transfer the whole thing into biology. I don't know. The theme of, then it goes on to try to, they make it sound like it's just a bunch of silly stories. But then it says there's a great variety among the types of transformations, from human to inanimate objects like rocks and whatever. From constellations they could change to. From animals, they could go into plants. They could change into ants and animals and fungus and mushrooms. From one sex to another. They could change into hyenas, from one color of pebbles to another. They could change themselves into being exactly like a woman husband, and then go down and have sex with her. And she would never even know. She thought she was having sex with her own husband. They could change themselves into anything. That's why you never see any, not great looking gods. They're all perfectly handsome, all perfect muscles and all this stuff. Well, if you want to change yourself, I suppose that's what you do. You wouldn't change yourself into something that nobody would want. Although somebody would want you, probably. But anyway, this is that's what they did. All they were interested in was having sex. Zeus really was a very sexual god. All right, like I said, here's ChatGPT. Was Zeus a sexual god? Yes. Zeus, the chief deity of Greek mythology, he was the god in charge at this time during about 800 BC and earlier. At 800 BC, his daughters told Hesiod to write down the history. Hesiod basically was the first one to, Hesiod, however you want to pronounce it, was basically one of the first writers in history. And he wrote exactly what the daughters of Zeus told him to write. And he wrote like crazy. If you look him up, Hesiod, Hesiod. But anyway, Zeus had affairs with all kinds, having numerous sexual relationship affairs with both goddesses and mortal women. His many liaisons resulted in a large number of offspring, including major figures in mythology like Athena, Apollo, Artemis, and Hercules. Hercules was the one that helped him kill all the giants. Zeus's sexual exploits were a significant aspect of his character, reflecting themes of power, desire, and a complexity of divine interactions with humans in ancient Greek culture. However, these stories also often illustrate the consequences of his actions, including jealousy and conflict among the gods. I say, look at what the Bible says about they signed a pact together, and apparently Zeus was the leader of the pact. Says, let's go down and have sex with the women. We were supposed to be here to be watchers over them, but they're too attractive to pass this up. And they took 200 which is 1/3 of the stars in the skies, were swept to earth by the tail of the great dragon. That's what it says in the ancient text. All right, let's just say Zeus was the one that decided we want to go down and have women and have wives, because that's what he was, a sexual guy. In the Bible, Revelations 12:4 states his tail swept away 1/3 of the stars in the sky and cast them to the earth. Originally, there were supposedly 600 watchers that were sent to help mankind. And this is 1/3 of them. It would be 200, and that's what the original story was. The 200 angels got together, which are the stars in the sky, and they all got together, and he swept them along with him to earth. Okay, my outstanding friends, I guess I'll sum it up with this. Most of what you've been taught is pretty much the same as that. All right, I love you all. Pay attention to reality. Right now, it's very hard for you to stand up, to talk. But if enough people stand up and talk, we can close this case and get into the real world. Right now, it's just, You have to say what you're told to say to keep these people on top. This is not the way it's supposed to work, my friends. All right, I love you all. Do something.